All right, so what's today, the 9th, I think?
Yep.
September 9th, 2019. We are here at the policy committee meeting over in the farmhouse. We have Dr. Levinowitz is not here. He is down, I believe, in Washington, D.C., lobbying for education funding. So instead, it is just me and Mr. Sirota from the school board, along with the administrator. So anyway, do we have any announcements or communications, Dr. Yanni?
No, not today.
Okay, so we have minutes. We had our last policy committee was on August 12th. So if there's any changes to that, to those minutes, we'll give them to Brooke and we'll make those changes. Otherwise, those will be approved at the next legislative meeting. So we can start with, it's like board docs has changed slightly, so it's 5.01. We have policies and administrative regulations that we had looked at previously. At least all the policies were up for first read. And I think we had looked both at these with the administrative regulations as well. I'm not sure 716, but I know 704.1 and 704.2. So we'll start at the top. Policy 704, maintenance. Do we have any changes from the ones on the agenda?
I have a comment on the AR.
Okay. So no changes to the policy unless the AR warrants that.
Right.
Okay.
And there are a few of these that I feel like we may have talked about that didn't get captured. In the bullets at the bottom of the AR, the fourth bullet, methods by which technology is being used. I think we discussed it's not just technology is being used, but other new practices, new approaches, new ways of doing things. I don't think we only care about technology, we care about just any new anything to drive innovation, cost savings.
So how about if we just say methods being used in the facilities department to drive innovation?
That works for me.
Yeah.
That's all I have on that. There were a couple others like that, but we'll get to them another time.
Yeah, I didn't have anything on the policy or the AR.
All right. So with that change, those are good to go for second reading, adoption, and approval on the AR. How about 702 or 704-2? Is that good?
I'm good there.
Okay. And then 706, property record.
I'm good there too.
All right. Any notes in there? Okay.
Still check 706.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so 706 is good. So then 716, integrated pest management.
I have a couple things in here. Let's see, it says, I'm trying to find the location somewhere, it says updated training. The last of the green bits says personnel involved in making decisions will participate in updated training at least annually. And I wasn't clear whether that meant the training is updated annually or the participation is annual. So I think it means participation. I assume it means the participation should be annual. But
Yeah, shall participate in annual
shall.
updated training.
Oh, you know what it means, because at least annual.
Oh, at least annually, right?
Appropriate personnel involved in making decisions related to pest management shall participate
At
in
least annually.
updated training at least annually.
Participate in training at least annual? Do we need updated?
I'm fine taking updated out.
Not sure if it adds anything. And then my other question was, so it says record shall be maintained for at least 3 years. Why 3 years? Is that a mandated thing?
No, it's right
in the green, right above the,
I think that's statutory. I can
Oh, I'm
check.
sorry.
I think that's, I can double check while you're on with something else, but I think that's statutory.
Mhm.
okay.
Okay, so we're moving the word updated.
And then an AR,
Yeah.
kind of.
Yeah.
So a couple similar questions, and maybe this is mandated too, Ken, but, so the notification timelines in here, and the bullets kind of in the middle, are standardized, 72 hours before, et cetera. Are those mandated, or should we be following label restrictions?
All mandated. They're all mandated.
Okay. And then,
Well, the at least part is all mandated, yes.
okay. And then there's a 7 hours somewhere where you have to, like, nobody's allowed to be in there for 7 hours after treatment. I'm trying to find it. Oh, here it is, third paragraph.
Yeah.
And this is, you know, in a context or elsewhere, where, like right at the bottom of this, pesticide label restricts re-entry to a longer period. Why not? We have to follow the longer period. So why aren't we just always following label restrictions? Why are we?
The label restrictions could be less.
Yeah. So if the label restriction is less, why are we smarter than that?
Where are you reading it?
In the third paragraph, where students are expected to be present, blah, 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 within 7 hours following the application.
So you're starting the regulation, right?
Yeah. Is there a reason that we're putting in 7 hours as a minimum?
District has applications within a school building. Expected present every 7 hours by application. That's right out, I think that's right out of statute.
Yeah, I mean,
That's
that's
right.
It says that, then obviously we have to do it, and I'm fine with it. But
Everything is including the 3 years, by the way, for the record. It's right out of 24 PS 773.2.
Maybe we can throw a citation in there. So.
It's in there.
yeah, it may be. I wasn't smart enough to follow.
I didn't see it in the AR. I saw it in
Yeah.
the, yeah, I saw it in the policy. I didn't see it in the AR.
You could add it to there.
Yeah.
Add
The 20, the first site in the policy.
717.
And it's not a big deal, but if you wanted, you could also put where it says the detailed records for 3 years, you could move it from the policy to the reg, just in case it ever changes, but it's not likely to change.
Yeah, that, we should probably do that.
Yeah, I think so. All right, so Brooke, that paragraph, the superintendent or designate, this is within the policy that has that 3 years. It's near the end. It's the second paragraph at the end. If you can put that paragraph into the AR.
Sure.
Thank you.
Since you're moving to be there, you don't need a second, you don't need to go back to a first reading.
Right, because it's, okay.
All right, so I'm done with those.
Joe's done? Okay.
I mean, I think that's one of the places where the code is bizarre, but
Right, agreed.
you put in law things that have to do with science, you know.
It's never good. It's never good to have, you know,
Always,
legislature
therefore
involved
always
in
wrong.
science.
But,
Yeah. Yeah. All right, so we're at the 301.1 application policy.
Yes, we have a couple smaller ones here. Let's see. Under hiring, so under policy, bullet A, hiring, 2 things. One is, it says, first it says relatives of board members may not be considered, shall not be considered, right? And then it says relatives of employees may be considered for certain cases. Relatives of board members and employees with an individual contract. So then it says relatives of employees may be considered. And those couldn't conflict unless we really mean, and I think we mean other employees.
Right.
So I'm not sure if other employees is good policy language, but I think that's what we really mean here.
I think so.
Wait. So we're under hiring, relatives of board members.
Okay, the first sentence is good.
Fine, yeah.
That's,
And those employees with individual contracts, that's the important part. And then in the second sentence, it says relatives of employees
right,
may be considered,
right.
To what other?
but we
Yeah.
mean other employees, right?
Right.
We mean even those employees? So relatives of Steve?
Yeah,
maybe.
I mean, the first, the first sentence is saying, so add
Fine,
other.
yeah, relative, you're right.
Okay,
This
and
word
then,
other.
going back to that first sentence now, relatives of board members and those employees with individual contracts shall not be considered. I think we really mean relatives of board members or those employees.
Yes.
Are the contracts with the board versus the district?
Yeah, so my contract is directly with you,
Right.
so is Andy's, and so is Ashley's.
Right. And that's what we consider it a contract with the board versus a contract with the district.
Yeah.
So I'm changing and to or.
Yeah, because I am concerned that few people are actually going to be relatives, board members and those people. I mean,
Okay.
could happen. Unless you go back out and even we are all day.
We're gonna do 23 and me.
All right, so we added the word or,
Yeah,
Okay.
or changed
changed and to or, right.
Relatives of board members or those included. Shouldn't it be neither nor?
So what if you're both?
Relatives shall not be changed, neither, unless, you can do neither nor if you change the shall not to a shall.
Yeah.
I think those are equivalent, but whenever, either way works for me.
So we're gonna say neither
Neither
relatives.
nor.
Of board members, nor those employees, nor relatives of
And then
those employees.
changing shall.
Who are those employees? Shall, got it.
That's all I have.
Okay. Okay. All right. So it's then 309, assignment and transfer. I'm just assuming, Steve, that you don't have any change unless you.
Right,
Okay,
yes.
yes, okay, that's what
Yeah.
I figured, okay, so I'm just.
So I see that there's no new language here, but under authority,
Are we still on?
Yeah.
I'm sorry,
We're thorough now, okay, sorry. Yeah,
It says, the board shall approve the initial assignment at time of appointment, and the board should also approve any reassignment. Should is a weak word, do we really mean shall?
Where are you, Mark?
Under authority
Oh,
for reassignments.
so for reassignment, so what we talked about at the last meeting was the board would only take action again if they changed levels. If a teacher became an administrator, if a support staff member became a teacher. So I think we should say, the board shall approve the initial assignment of administrative personnel at the time of employment, and the board shall approve any reassignment or transfer of administrative personnel if their job
Change of status.
Status.
Is what we call it.
Yeah, sorry, thank you.
Yep.
Yeah.
If their
Well,
job-
However, so right now, as written, this is just about administrators.
Right. I mean, we could make it fit
We're
administrative
trying
teacher.
to
Right.
combine 3 into 300.
Right. So if we do that, then under purpose, we would take out, the first line, take out administrative.
yeah,
So the assignment and transfer within the district of employees shall be in accordance with the, I took out administrative
With the
needs of the district.
district, yeah.
Right? So then, under authority, the board shall approve the initial assignment of personnel
Right,
at the time of employment, and the board shall also approve any status change of employees. Is that?
I think that's perfect, yeah.
And that's what we currently do.
That's definitely a bonus.
Yeah, that's what practicing policy, taking out reassignment, a line, I know.
So take out use, transfer.
Because we don't have 4s and 5s on the agenda for this particular policy, or does this not exist in the 4s and 5s?
We can repeal the 4 and 5.
Yeah, we'll look at it.
So then, under delegation of responsibility, I have the superintendent or designee. I took out the second superintendent. So the superintendent or designee shall provide a system of assignment or reassignment that includes voluntary transfers.
And is something? Might be an and.
Considering
Yeah. it should be an
any assignment or transfer, what are you saying? Or
and.
and?
System of assignment or reassignment should be system of assignment and reassignment.
Yes.
So
There's a-
in under guidelines,
Yes.
third paragraph.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Is that specific to administrative
So I
staff?
would just say staff members shall be informed of their assignments at the earliest practical date preceding the school year in which the assignment will be effective.
And the same thing, just drop administrative
Last.
from the last paragraph.
Yep.
All right, let's go back to first reading.
Yep. I'm thinking when we read this before, we must have just been saying just for administrative staff.
Yeah.
So this is the second first read?
Mhm.
Yeah, no. It's a new first
Need
read.
first read.
First.
Yeah, because there's a change.
Under 100.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, so this is another one that I have comments on. I think we discussed it, I don't think I've captured.
Okay.
You're ready.
Yeah.
So there, under guidelines, it starts with the name of this committee. It hasn't talked about a committee to that point. Later on, it defines a steering committee under comprehensive planning process. And under authority, it says, ensure active participation.
Yeah,
Where
so-
is that?
So you see under authority, the second
Yeah,
paragraph,
second paragraph.
superintendent.
So all these three things are
Right.
tied together and all in the wrong order.
Right. So I think we can say district personnel, students, parents, representatives from businesses and community, which shall constitute the steering committee. Which, right?
Yep. And so, Ken, I think we discussed last time, in statute or code, there is specific language about comprehensive plan committees. So whatever name is in that is the name we should use here. And then, and if if that document calls it a standing committee, we should call it a standing committee, otherwise I'm allergic to the standing committee language. Because if there's a standing committee, we must have one right now.
Oh, we don't.
Do you think it's far here?
That got changed. I think we talked about adding an AR.
I don't have any notes about
Yeah.
We could develop an AR that encapsulates what we do, because
Yeah.
the comprehensive plan is not in and of itself rigorous enough to guide the
Right.
district. So I can just, what I'll just do is I'll bring it back next month. So what I'll do is I'll just take all the steps that we did and I'll
Perfect.
put it on, put it in
Yep.
the handbook for the
Yeah.
strategic action.
Okay. So.
And we, just for everyone's edification, we received an email right before the start of the school year that the strategic planning process is going, or the comprehensive planning process is going to change again.
Shocking.
IU 15 is no longer going to be doing it there, the state's outsourced it, so.
Great.
Does this mean, are we ready with the first
Yeah.
reading?
We can still do the first read because we're just going to be adding to it, and so this way it's still just.
Yeah, do
like
another
text to us.
first reading
Okay.
of this, with the change that we discussed and
Yeah.
whatever the life Ken finds for definitions.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess we can just do a
I
second.
think it's just called the steering committee.
I agree with you, I think that's what I
So second first reading, that's what it will say on the legislative. Got it.
Okay, now that we can look at 101, philosophy of education. We didn't have anything else on this one last week. It's like
Second
3
reading
sentences.
for-
Yeah, so second reading for that.
On 102, in the purpose statement, just for clarity, right after Pennsylvania Department of Education, I added PDE in parentheses.
Mhm.
And then in definitions, academic standards shall be defined as what all students, instead of should, I changed that to must know and be able to do.
Yeah, I had that one. I also had, I think we discussed last month, I don't think the first sentence is necessary
Oh, under purpose.
on a purpose.
Right, we can take that out.
And then, just a really minor one, but in that next sentence, that set forth academic standards that the district must utilize as a
Mhm.
Where was that?
Okay.
The district.
That's all I had.
All right. And 104.
If anyone really was in love with that first sentence, there is a better policy for it to go into.
It's fine. Can you change?
Or, the only thing I had is this, obviously didn't get updated because it still has 326, 426, 526 at the bottom.
Oh, sorry.
Did we have any changes to this? I think we just reviewed
Except for
it.
those numbers.
Right, that stuff has to come off, but other than that, we reviewed it, there was nothing else.
And there was nothing on it, so it's not even a second read, it's just a, so that just, so that won't be on the agenda at all because that was just under review.
Okay, so we'll just note that it was reviewed and
Yep, and like I
I
had
can
since
make
last
those
review.
updates
Yep,
to the numbers.
yeah. Okay.
By the way, one of the things, when you look at our administrative regulation manual and you click where there's attachments, a lot of the attachments are forms that you have to fill out.
Right.
Sometime during this year, we're going to make those all electronic.
Wow, that'd be
So
lovely.
form fillable, and then that way, when they get submitted, they will get routed to the person they're supposed to route
That'd be
to.
lovely.
Now that Google has a routing feature, so like if
Okay.
something is supposed to go to the Director of People Services or Director of HR, people can fill it out and go instead of printing it out and filling it out and then
That's
submitting to the
lovely.
district. So
Okay. I've always wanted kindergarten registration to be online, so.
For your next
Yeah.
week,
No. Not for me, not for me, for
Better.
life. I want kindergarten registration to be online. I think that'd be better for everyone involved.
For
I am
everybody.
not having any more children. I am done. On the record. My husband supports this. All right, I think we got through, so that's all of our second reading, adoption, approvals, and we had a couple first readings in there, one review, okay. So, all right. So we can get on to the new stuff, which started 103.
So before we start at 103,
Yep.
I have a question about numbering, because you can see it in this list. So we have, some have dashes and some have dots, and
Yeah.
there's AR 113 dash 123, and then there's AR 113 dot 1, which is for a different policy. So we need to standardize that nomenclature one way or the
yeah,
other.
so to me, for consistency, it should always be dot.
So we've recently been doing a dash.
That way?
So, I mean, so
I
dot
don't
means a new policy, or it's a new section. To me, the dash is within.
Yeah, it's like a different meaning, right?
Right.
You have dashes for ARs when there's multiple ARs for the
Oh,
same.
that's
For the
right.
same policy.
Same
That's
policy.
Right, a dot is a new.
That's right.
It's a
Yes.
policy.
Right. And we're
So it's
throwing,
okay that AR 113.1 is tied to policy 113.1, and then we
Right.
have also AR 113-1.
those are tied to 113, yeah.
You know, unfortunately, people aren't generally reading these back to back, but that's, someday that's going to bite us, but.
Yeah, they're linked.
They're all linked, we have
Okay.
I mean, it's not like there's infinite numbers or anything. Okay,
All right.
When you write your style book, that is,
Yeah, I know.
that could be the
We're
preamble.
waiting
Exactly.
eagerly.
I know, you
Robert
lost your
Lucas.
partner.
Yeah.
I know. I'm good for the Oxford.
So I have a couple,
Wow.
I have a couple changes. The first sentence, the word equal, I changed to equitable. So the board declares it to be district policy to provide an equitable opportunity to provide
Yeah.
equitable opportunities for all students to achieve their maximum potential and so on.
Yeah, I have that one too.
And then I had like the school district of Upper Dublin changed to Upper Dublin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This had been written fairly recently, so there wasn't.
Yeah, we have reviewed it.
Yeah, I have three more little things. One is it says Director of Pupil Personnel Services somewhere, which I think is supposed to be Director. Oh yeah, down at the bottom,
Yes.
Delegation of Responsibility.
Pupil services.
Yeah. The 3, 4, 5 policy numbers at the bottom.
Yeah, that's what I was
And then the first sentence, that whole statement of authority is one sentence. And there was something I had that was awkward about it, now I'm trying to find it.
Which,
Where's the
first,
first
first
paragraph?
Authority.
Under
Okay,
authority.
way up at the top there.
just, board declares it to be the district policy.
You simply, district policy shall be to provide.
All right.
The board, it's a board
And
policy.
the
You don't need to say
board
provide.
declares.
Yeah, we don't have to declare.
I like
the
the,
Yeah.
okay. It shall be,
District policy shall be to provide.
yeah, district policy shall be.
Yeah, I don't know what, yeah, that must be what I was thinking. Yeah, okay.
Okay. All right, that's first to read.
For
I mean,
policy.
Hold on, do we need a first read, or can we just make those changes? Are any of those substantive changes?
Well,
Equal versus
equal,
equitable, you're right.
Is already some.
Yep, you're right, that one's changed. Beyond that.
And you probably want to highlight it, but
What?
you might want to highlight it too. It's
Right.
important. It's a meaningful
Okay.
change. It's not like,
Oh, that's a good one. Okay.
Before we go on to 105, I have sort of a question for Ken. Ken, school board always has to approve the purchase of textbooks, the adoption of textbooks. What about curriculum? Because when I look at, so that can be delegated completely to the superintendent or designate.
I'll confirm that, but I believe that's correct. Section should be section 400, it's not mine.
Is it?
Did they make that change, or did they just never make that change in the code to change curriculum, or to make, I mean, I don't,
And my guess is that that line, that boards shall approve textbooks, whatever it's.
Right.
It's probably been there forever.
right, and at the time it's encompassing curriculum.
Right, yeah.
Right,
Because so many people, even other superintendents, call textbooks curriculum.
right.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Well,
textbooks
that's
are
why,
the,
my follow-up question is going to be, is it clear to, is it universally clear what's a text, where the line is?
Right, we should
Textbook
probably,
and
right, we should
curriculum.
probably, so we have here, we have curriculum defined.
Yeah.
And then we can add a statement that says textbooks and other instructional materials are the vehicles through which curriculum is delivered.
Assuming that what Ken finds is that in school code it says we'll approve textbooks and not approved curriculum.
So I think that's what, I think, because at one point we had that, I think, has this been changed now, this one, we changed it somewhere else at some point, we talked about curriculum.
There's a number of policies around this.
And we had,
that we're gonna today.
at some point, I don't know if any of these are the ones, we had changed the word textbook, and we added textbooks and all curriculum materials.
Yeah,
We
that's-
changed it at some point.
Yeah.
Yes, I can't remember what it was either, but I know we made that change or something.
That is in one of the policies today, and I have that to talk about, because
Okay.
that, if we say and all curriculum materials, that means teachers can't supplement. Like, if it's not an approved material.
Well, it's definitely not that. I mean, it's definitely non-materials, resource materials. That does not use the word approved. Just textbooks. You just see if it says anything about curriculum on the website.
So I think we need to define what we're talking about when we're defining curriculum versus textbooks. I mean, textbooks is, it seems the like archaic term that is used, and I think that really what, at least in the theory of the board is tasked to, is to approve the whole curricular change, the whole vision for the district, which it should be,
All school textbooks shall be adopted by the board,
Yeah.
such books,
because that's just the only way
no
it's delivered.
adoption shall be made without the superintendent's recommendation except for 2/3 vote. Such books supplementary to textbooks regularly adopted may be adopted and purchased for use in the school at any time. But here, we're still talking about books.
Yeah.
Such supplementary shall
As
be.
long as I'm in touch, right, that's what I was gonna say, as long as I'm in touch before.
Right. I think what's important is to think like, survival science is a new course that we have this year at the high school. When that course was approved, the course description was approved. There was no textbook, but there was, a set of materials or a description of what was going to be used in that course. I think that's what's important for approval.
I think what's important for approval is the stuff that is politically, hand grenade like, so anything involving evolution, climate change, politics, and whether that's a handout or a textbook. But on the other hand, on the flip side, I don't want the board to have to approve every little thing,
Right.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So I agree, if we draw a line somewhere and accept that it's imperfect and,
I think we have to define curriculum as something, or curricular materials as something, and then with an idea that there's certain things that just aren't within that definition. That like, those little, some of the little handouts, like the highlights, or whatever the heck, some of the kids get, especially the large kids, we don't
yeah.
need to do that. This is the course of, study what the kids are really learning. It's the bigger vision of it. Because that's what textbook meant back in the day. Now textbook means.
So really,
Another thing.
I think what is therefore important is, what we should be doing is bringing not just then the high school course of study, or program of study to the board for review and approval. We should also be bringing the middle school and then the elementary. Now, middle school and elementary won't have the number of changes that the high school has.
Exactly.
But at least that way, there's an annual review. We bring the high school in the January timeframe so that they can start scheduling. We can then bring the middle school program of studies in the February, March timeframe, and then in the spring we can lay out the elementary program of studies.
I don't know, is that too much? Is that, I think, Sarah, what you're saying is that if you were to read this as an originalist, that's what this meant at the time. But, these things change all the time, and so that's a lot of material for the board to review. And, we have trusted professionals to,
So I'm thinking, when I think of like the curriculums, I'm thinking of when we did Eureka math, right? We did ZERN and all those sort of things, made those major changes now. Those
Those
aren't
big
necessarily
adoptions.
textbooks, right, that we're talking about, but we're talking about this whole program that we're
so
doing.
I'm only concerned about that from the board's, I shouldn't say only, I'm primarily concerned about that from the board's point of view because of the money, not because of the content. there are other things I'm concerned about content and not necessarily because of money.
What do you mean?
As a board member
Okay.
specifically.
Right.
So, I think the board wants to weigh in on those big, expensive, hundreds of thousands of dollars kind of purchases.
Right.
Because it's a hundreds of thousands of dollar kind of
Right.
purchase. Not because we think that it's important to teach English this way or that way, like they have the educational professionals to do that part.
Right.
So, but I think the board does want to have the opportunity to weigh in on if there's something that our community, because we're charged with this because we're representing our community,
Right.
that
I
disagrees
think
with
climate
the
change is a
values.
good, right,
Yeah.
right, I think that's a good one,
Yeah.
right, is a good example, is that, when we're reviewing the science curriculum or program, whatever we're gonna call it, that, does that include climate change, right? We would want that, so,
Well, from a legal point of view,
Yeah.
anything the law school code says is you have to, the board has to quote adopt textbooks and supplementary books.
right,
From a practical standpoint, any expenditure, for example, you're talking, education
Mhm.
committee or regarding, okay, we want to have this program and it's going to require this resource. And this particular resource is going to cost X amount. So your authority, your general authority to have to approve contracts would give the board the power, that's how the board adopts curriculum.
right.
Is by
Is by
approving
approving
contracts
price,
for
yeah.
the resources necessary to
Okay.
carry out that curriculum, but the board does not adopt curriculum.
Right.
So if a book gets, not a book, if curriculum that's not a book gets used in a science class that says the Earth is 6,000 years old, and somebody raises a stink about that, did the board have any responsibility to have reviewed that?
In books, yeah.
But if it's not a book,
No, it's not a
Is that
book,
handout?
and there was a resource. That's not, it's not something that in theory, it's the board. There's no direct board vote that would cause you to oversee and be responsible for for a decision made by one of your staff. You can
so.
ask the superintendent to direct.
Yeah, all right, so then I guess the question was, and I think I already know the answer, at least I know the answer for me, does the board want to have that more control than just books and textbooks?
Right.
Or do we want to just let the interpretation of, the literal interpretation of books and
Right,
textbooks?
do we want to be able to prevent someone from handing out a flyer that says the Earth is 6,000 years old?
Or does the future board? You also giving the future board the ability to tell the administration, we want you to not teach evolution anymore.
Yeah,
Right,
right, exactly.
well, they
That's-
could change policy and do that in June.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, that's true.
right. It's not
What is the
law.
point of anything?
Right.
Also, it's a deep philosophical discussion, but I don't know
That
if we
is.
want to try to, do we
Just
want
the
to
two
try
of
to
us,
have
let's hash it
that?
out.
Well, I think, one of the things that,
That's something we can talk about.
yeah,
We can talk about this in education committee. I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
That this could be a discussion for education, because there's more board members there. We
Yeah.
could throw it in education.
What authority does the board want?
Want to have, because that goes straight to the education.
right, so why don't
committee.
I talk with Dr. Ludwig, we can put that on for a topic in October.
Exactly.
And what I'll do is I'll bring forth a recommendation of things that I think should be,
Exactly.
Yeah,
give us some examples of
Right.
things, and then we can define it as wherever we want to define it, so then it includes what we're talking about and not. No, we don't want to have to approve every single thing, but we also don't want to make sure teachers are, I'm not that concerned of this actually happening or anything like that. And bringing something in that's
Right.
in contradiction to
To-
the approved program, right? I think that's the,
I've seen some districts take it to the nth degree where you're not allowed, unless it went through an approval process.
Right.
You know.
and I don't want
But-
that.
No,
Right, we're not
definitely
talking that, we're just
But I-
saying that.
Right, but I think if there's something that someone brings in that is contradictory
Right,
or contrary to the established purpose of what we're supposed to be able to teach in the class, we have to have something to be saying, no, you can't do that, and here's why, here it is.
exactly,
Yeah.
right, so we have that, and then,
But that, I mean,
yeah, so I think if we put that on the education committee, I think that makes more sense to throw it through education, because
Yeah.
otherwise it's me and Mark making these decisions, so. We're okay with it probably, but,
Are we
you
a forum?
know.
We're not even a forum, we can't go out and.
I know, well, we're
Just make a
giving,
recommendation.
we're making recommendations today, so.
How many policy committee members do you have? 4?
Oh, no,
three.
no, we have 3 currently, we
Yeah,
are
so
a quorum.
You are a quorum.
Yeah,
There's
we have not been
problems.
discussing
The
them.
2 of you are never allowed to talk privately about policy.
We have not.
With either each
We
other.
have, yeah.
We have not, in the
Fortunately,
last
you
month,
know,
we have
in the
not
summer, so.
talked about policies, yeah. We can talk about other stuff, but not policies, so. Oh, there's a misspelling in this too, the is misspelled.
Yes.
I also have, I have another wording thing in the
It's
very,
the green section, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I got
in
it.
the very last sentence, which is old, the board directs the superintendent to pursue actively state and federal aid.
Mhm.
That set off my grammar alarm.
Which one, where are we now?
Somebody didn't want to split
Are
it.
we still on 105?
To retroactively, so
And
Yeah.
board directs the superintendent to pursue actively.
Yeah, I'm okay with putting the intent to be
Actively
there, but,
pursue.
yeah.
That's a little bit redundant.
Gene Roddenberry said it's okay.
Who said this?
Gene Roddenberry.
Never, yeah, it's consensus now, isn't it, that you can split?
Yeah.
Yes, I know,
It's a hard habit to break all those years of.
Library.
I know, it's great. It's
Don't
great.
split the
Didn't
infinity.
matter.
See,
All right,
all those years of learning grammar there, all those years of diagramming sentences.
I mean, the way that text messaging goes, and it's like, just like, I can't handle it when people don't spell the word you, like, just the letter U, it's like,
Oh, you're so
what happened? I know.
You can't do that.
I know,
So
I
somebody
know.
said you can't do it.
That's how old, I know. Dinosaur was from before. All right, so we're gonna put 105 essentially on the education committee in October, so that way it can be subject to.
I think that would also be a good conversation because sometimes, last year there was a question at Education Committee, does the board approve every film, movie clip that is viewed? And I think it's a good conversation
Yeah.
to
Right.
have.
No.
So we're gonna sort of table this one for
Yeah,
now?
exactly. So we're gonna just talk about it, and that's what, if education, I mean, we can talk about it and actually, we can make the changes in education and then just go straight from education to legislative meeting, that's fine. We don't need to bring it back to policy unless there's a reason
Oh.
that education don't need to.
Yeah. I do have a 105.3 question that Ken's in the room. Steve and I talked about this a little
Okay.
bit earlier, that I'd like to do now. I'm just curious about the curriculum council, standing curriculum committees, curriculum advisory council.
This
in
is 5 or?
Policy, this is 105.3.
Okay, no.
And I'm curious whether that's in statute. Do we have to have, is that something that we established, or is that?
105.3, you're asking,
So it says, well, in the, right under guidelines in the first, beginning, it says, the structure will include ... district curriculum councils and standing curriculum advisory councils. And then it defines standing curriculum advisory groups, or charters standing curriculum advisory groups to work with educators and refine the curriculum, blah, blah,
and that's not statutory.
blah. Okay.
So I'm comfortable getting rid of it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, that was my question.
Now, you're still bound by the, whatever the collective bargaining agreement.
Right.
It talks about, I think there's some group in there that.
I could,
Yeah.
You're still bound by that.
I don't think this was talking about that.
Okay.
No, this is like,
So get rid of that sentence?
Well, I think we're gonna,
Get rid of the whole paragraph.
do we want to even get into the specifics? I thought we were looking at the whole thing again in education.
yeah, we can look.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
we-
just we'll
But
bring it
just,
back.
yeah, but that second sentence, you can strike that.
So you don't forget.
Yeah, I would just strike it.
Yep.
In the draft version.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a good idea. So it appears twice in the first paragraph under guidelines and the second paragraph under guidelines.
Does
Starting
part,
standing, no, starting standing.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you want to look at anything else in the
No.
105? Okay, so we'll put all of the 105 stuff into education. So at least we can talk about the big stuff, even if we don't look at all the point
Yeah,
one,
well,
point two,
I
point
think-
three.
yeah, I think
We'll bring
we'll
it
have-
back once we hear
Yeah.
what people want to do, and then we can,
Because I think that's a philosophical discussion,
I
not a
agree.
language discussion.
Then I think then we should also put 106 there as well, guides for planned instruction, because depending upon what we want to do with
okay,
approvals, I think then that will also feed into it.
okay.
So sorry for asking this again. but-
All the 105s.
No, I have
Mhm.
another question. Do we still have to put this on for first reading?
No.
No?
No,
Should not.
it'll be fine. It won't be
Not
on
yet.
the, yeah,
We're not
so we're
ready.
just moving it straight to the education.
It will be a first
agenda.
reading in like November.
Exactly,
Got
that's
it.
when
That
we'll
was
see
my-
it.
That's
Yep,
what I wanted to clarify. Thank you.
yep.
Got it.
It'd be first reading here, though, not necessarily. like-
Well, we
Oh, sorry.
could, depending
We'll see what
upon,
happens.
right, well, depending upon what happens, education committee, we could actually make all the changes there and then move it forward.
Yeah.
We'll see, we'll see what happens,
Yeah.
so.
Thank you for clarifying. So
No
I
problem.
just wanna make sure.
You're welcome. Anything?
So 106.1, this was a policy that was exclusively geared towards elementary grouping. We want to rename it and call it equitable scheduling and course offerings for students. It seemed counter to have something, a policy just for elementary, when we know grouping is a far greater issue at the secondary level. So the first statement there really is taken from an earlier policy that we read. Well, actually, it was also in the policy, but again, we changed the word to equitable. And really the changes, or the substantive things that are changing fall under the guidelines, and then there's a pretty significant AR that goes with it. So at the elementary level, it talked about reserving the right to group homogeneously for math. We took that out. So we have elementary students will be grouped heterogeneously, and placement will be made in consideration of students' educational needs. Then on the next page, secondary 6 to 12, at the secondary level, the building principal or designee will assign students to courses appropriate to their need. And then we go into the administrative regulation, which explains all of this.
The details.
So for the purpose statement is really focusing on equitable educational opportunities. So if you look under guidelines, in the K-5 level, we're going to group students heterogeneously, except they have a IEP, GIEP, and I also added, we have to add, or Section 504 accommodation plan. Secondary scheduling of course offerings. I want to delete that first sentence that said that districts shall offer courses that meet students' needs.
Yeah, I find that
Yeah.
as dangerous.
Shall be responsible, building principal for developing a course of study that articulates course offerings, moderating schedule process, yada, yada, yada. But then when we really get into the meat of it, the district shall eliminate the lowest level track 3 courses at Sandy Run Middle School according to the following schedule. So this year, the lowest level math class went.
Yeah.
Next year, the lowest level 7th grade math will go. And then in 21-22, the lowest level 8th grade class will go, with the exception if we have kids that come out of pre-algebra that still don't have the requisite skills for Algebra 1, a full-year Algebra 1 class. We'll split Algebra up into Algebra 1A in 8th grade and Algebra 1B in 9th grade. And that's a pretty standard practice across districts. And we'll make sure that none of our subgroups of students are overly represented in that course if we have to split Algebra 1 up. At the high school, we eliminated the Track 3 Algebra 1 class this year, so there is no Track 3. And then over the next couple of years, so by 22-23, Track 3 classes of required courses will be eliminated across our course catalog. So That would bring us in line with just about every other district where we have advanced placement classes, honors, and academic classes.
Can this whole section, I understand why it's written this way, because the language we've used to talk about this the whole time about eliminating tracks. But can we describe instead what we will offer instead of what we're eliminating?
Sure. Yeah, I can revise it.
Well, yeah, if you're gonna do, I would supplement it, what we're gonna offer as opposed to taking, we don't wanna change this language, this tracks the language of the.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah.
But we can add, we can say what we're, like, so for example, like if you look, the district will eliminate the lowest level track 3 courses at Sandy Run Middle School, then it says effective with the 1920 school
explains
year. Grade 6 math offerings will be math 6 and 3.
Maybe as outlined below or something like that, right, I know, that's the,
Yeah.
that, right, we want to make sure we are all,
Yeah.
that
Yep,
we're all very clear about what, we all know what we're talking about with track 3, but we want to
Yeah.
make sure that
Yeah.
people understand that.
I had a couple other little language things.
AR?
In AR, under guidelines, the secondary section, the first paragraph, says, monitoring the scheduling process, construing, which I'm sure should be constructing, a master schedule, and providing individual student schedules. What is the difference between providing individual student schedules and then in the next line, in the next sentence, scheduling students? So further, the building principal doesn't need to be responsible for scheduling students. How is that different than?
we can actually take that sentence.
Great.
Okay.
Okay.
And I got the construing, and so there's somewhere in here, let me find it. So in that first, same paragraph, shall be responsible for developing a course of study.
Mhm.
Is that different? The language I'm familiar with is programs.
Program studies.
Okay, I wasn't sure if that was just, if that was a different thing. Okay.
Good catch on that.
That's all I have.
Okay. So add 504 programs and- Okay. Well, we'll wait, I guess, on the AR anyway, since we'll do a first read on the 106.
Yeah,
.1.
so when it comes back, we'll see
So-
the updated AR.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, okay, so I can just make a note.
But I like that point, we can add a chart, like what the courses will look like.
Yeah, I think that'll be a lot more clear.
Right, I think so too.
Yeah, and the thing is, in the high school program of studies,
Mhm.
the vision for where we're going is already laid out, so what I'll do is I'll grab those screenshots and
Exactly.
actually put them
Yeah.
in there.
Perfect.
I know we have it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we've discussed, it's just a matter of the,
Well, right,
everyone
well,
knows
and we
what
want it
we're
to be
talking
clear
about.
for people that might be reading it for the first time.
Exactly. Perfect. Okay, so we have a first reading for 106.1. And then I have that we reviewed the AR, so when we look at back this next month in October, we'll have the note that we've reviewed it, so things should hopefully be good to go quickly for us. Okay.
109 and 110, we actually merged them, or talk about merging them, because 109 was such a, I'm sorry, 110 was such a short policy. So 109, we actually call now resource materials and instructional supplies.
Okay.
So I did catch a portion of 110 that I don't think is covered in the merged 109,
Okay?
which is materials for extracurricular. It says in 110, under authority, the board may require the students to provide certain supplies for participation in extracurricular activities. There's no similar sentence in the new 109.
So
Do you-
this
Are you
sentence,
doing that now?
I don't know, I'm asking the question.
I don't know, do they do sometimes?
Mm-hmm.
Mary Beth did.
Yeah,
where should I put that?
So
Right
we're
here?
gonna repeal 110.
we're going to repeal 110, but now in 109, supplies,
We got it.
the board provides instruction. However, we could say, however, the board may require that, or however, the district may require that students provide certain supplies for participation in extracurricular activities.
Did you mean to not include that language or that? That didn't carry over.
We can add that in as well.
Oh, yeah, there's the one, the last paragraph.
So we'll add, so that in 110, that language that said the board may require,
Right.
we'll add that to 109.
Where am I adding it to?
And then what we'll do at the end of the policy, we'll also add the language about the hardship language.
Yeah.
I have two other questions about 109. And once done making notes.
What else? Did you
Under the new language at the bottom, when individualized and non-reusable clothing or equipment, it says students shall be required to provide their own. Should that be a no?
Yes.
And then in the first set of bullets, the selection of resource materials shall be in accordance with the following objectives. Bullet 8, this may be straight out of statute, but the both sexes language is something we try to avoid elsewhere.
Right, so we could say to include materials that, in compliance with Title IX guidelines. Or,
What Title IX is saying.
well, how about if we just say to include materials that promote equity is the only way. How about that?
Or is it, I mean, I understand, I'm not just trying to say, it's not always showing women as.
That show members in the,
but-
I mean, you do it in the non-discriminatory roles. Yeah.
Yeah, so that language was written in 2002, so.
Well, I'm wondering if that was written in 1949.
Yeah. No, it was Title IX, so,
Oh, yeah, or whatever that was,
yeah.
which actually wasn't that long.
Show members.
How about if we say, to include materials that promote equity and comply with non-discriminatory practices or something along that line to bring
Yeah.
back to that policy,
Okay.
that other policy.
Yeah, like
The note I made was, so it also said, it's trying to say to include materials that do this, but it doesn't actually prohibit materials which don't.
That don't, okay.
I mean, it's clear what the intent is, but are we trying to actually prohibit materials which show, which imply discrimination, or?
How about to only include? Well,
Yeah, that's why I have to add the word only, but I don't know that that's actually what we're trying to do. My question is that actually what we want to do here? Because that's potentially pretty restrictive. I mean, there are a lot of materials that do get used, and in context, it's okay, I mean, Huck Finn. So,
That's all in context.
Yeah. So I don't know that we want only, but
Well, why even say to include, like to say to promote equity and non-discrimination?
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay, brilliant, okay.
That from the equity and non-discrimination.
Mhm.
Missing a C.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, that's all I have.
I think you,
Oh, yeah, just, so you have one line, the line
To
above is just to
promote.
promote, yeah.
Ah,
Echo that.
Okay. So we have to 112?
and we're okay, so we're gonna repeal 110.
Yeah.
That's the first repeal, and then first reading 109.
Okay. 112.
I just, in these next few, I just have very little items.
I have 4 on that. Should I add in?
Yep, please.
The statement of authority isn't actually a statement of authority, it's a statement of purpose. And also related to that, there's the 2 bulleted lists, one under purpose, one under guidelines. They used to have a difference because it used to be such a program can, and now it's the district's program shall.
Mhm.
So that's no longer a statement of purpose either. So I'm thinking if we move what's in authority to purpose and move what's in purpose down into guidelines, then it all makes a whole lot more sense.
So,
All right, so,
Make sure you all agree with me before you.
no, I mean,
So,
no, I think
the-
that makes sense, because, like, so what I did, I just crossed out the word purpose and I called that guidelines.
what about up here?
authority should be purpose now, correct? No.
Right, and my statement of authority is why does the board have the authority to set this policy? You know, where
And can I
does it
take
land?
off this second thing of guidelines?
Yeah, well, that, and then delegation of responsibility should move.
Underneath,
Mhm.
got that section.
So that was the big one.
Okay.
We use the word pupil in here several times, and I think elsewhere we've been trying to use the word student.
Student.
Yeah.
There's a couple places it shows
I will
up.
do that.
Yeah. And then, where is this? Under what was purpose is now guidelines, the K-12 Developmental School Counseling Program. What is that a thing? Like, is that just conceptually we
I
have
crossed out
counselors?
developmental and I just said
Okay.
a K-12 school counseling program.
Okay.
That's fine.
Wait, no, somewhere, I have, that's not where I was thinking, wrong place. Somewhere it says, oh, the very end, the very last bullet, bullet 8, implement the K-12 guidance and school counseling program with like uppercase, like, sounds like
It's a
it's a
program.
thing. Is that a thing?
It's not, so we just strike it.
Okay.
So am I striking and school counseling guidance program?
Bullet.
Just
Just
bullet
all
eight.
The whole thing? Okay.
That was 112.
All right, that was 112, so that's first read.
113, where it says the policy intends to, I took intend to, because the
Right.
policy safeguards, that's what. And then intends, and further the policy ensures parents and guardians are fully informed of their child's rights. Everything else in this policy, I'm just doing one last look over. Everything, the rest of this policy and the AR that goes with it is all right from, it's all legal language.
Yeah, I still had the school code.
Right.
It differs from school code
Can
in
we go back to the policy then?
significant
Is
ways.
it very okay, because everybody's okay with the policy, you don't even need to send it the first reading.
Right, because there's not really
You
any
can just mark it
changes.
reviewed,
I'll make
put a
those
review
changes.
date up there, and be done with it.
Yeah, because we didn't really make any.
For special ed?
Yeah, for 113, yep.
That's good. So review. Understood, that last review, perfect.
So it may be that unsurprisingly, all of my comments on ARs are gifted.
Yeah.
Maybe, is it last revised? Did we revise their check?
We're not reviewing
Last
it,
review,
because
yeah.
people will be looking for some sort of board amendment.
All right, so.
113.1?
I'm okay with one. I have nothing in one and two.
Okay, so just three.
I have a lot in three.
Is there anything that we want to talk about in one or two before we go on to three?
There's
No?
not.
Okay. Okay, so one.
Can we just make those?
Sorry.
You should put a review date.
Review
for
date,
those
and
two,
that's it?
For those, for
Yep.
113.1, 132.
Two, yep.
Now, the things, a lot of these things, maybe this policy committee isn't the right place for, but some of them probably is. So we'll see. I'll just go through them and we'll see
Okay.
what happens. So, under GIEP team, there's 6 bullets. One of them is teacher of the gifted. Let me pull up chapter 16 here, but that doesn't, I think, mean anything.
I think it means teacher with certification,
There is,
but there is no gifted certification.
Yeah. So, we have, in the elementary level, actually even at the middle level, we have teachers who are explicitly assigned to
teachers.
people GIPs. And maybe that's what we mean. But then what would you have at the GIP team meeting in high school? If that's what we mean.
Right, so we could take out number 6 totally.
Yeah.
Parents, guardians, who represent the district.
I mean, it says one or more of the students' recent teachers, and presumably we would select the appropriate.
Or instead of teacher of the gifted, we could say number 6 could be GIP case manager, unless it's specified somewhere else. Right, because we might not have, right, like at the high school, we don't have a teacher of the gifted, but we do have people that act as case managers.
Yeah, and they're there,
Right.
so that works.
Because a lot of times you have, when you get one or more of the students, recent teachers, you typically have the gifted teacher and then the classroom teacher.
It says under 1632, you shall include a teacher of the gifted.
Oh my
I didn't
gosh.
find that one, all right, where is it?
16.32, E6. I think you can
Oh, yeah,
explain it better.
yeah, so that whole list is, yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
I
it
missed
cuts
That whole
straight
list
from
is
that.
straight from 1632. Well, it's in
I
there.
think
We gotta
so.
like-
Isn't this a teacher designated by the district to
Case manager.
chase manage gifted students? Yeah.
Okay.
Every teacher in the district teaches gifted students.
Yeah. Okay. Let me find this one. All right, under screening, I have several under screening. Second paragraph, at the end of that paragraph, it says, so a GMBE will be recommended if the team determines the need for evaluation is indicated. If not, no further process will occur. I believe that violates 1622B1.
All right, what line? Say that again, on that or related to screening.
Where it says no further process will occur.
Okay.
Right, because if a parent parent
The
requests.
parent requests it,
Right.
Right,
you have
Has
to do it according to B1, 1622 B1.
What? I'm sorry, where in the regulation are you?
Second paragraph under screening, at the very end of the paragraph says,
It would be recommended to the
if the team determines that no evaluation is indicated, no further process will occur. That's,
Should we simply say failure shall occur unless requested by the parent?
yeah.
Unless, yeah, otherwise requested by parents/guardian. Yeah.
Following the process in chapter 16, 1622C. But if you or just cite it, but yeah, like they can't just request it. Like in code, they have to do it in writing.
Unless requested by the parent or guardian pursuant to,
district process.
oh, I was going to say pursuant to state regulation.
Yeah. Let's see, under screening, so this is always, and this, again, this may be not a policy committee discussion, but one of the weaknesses in our screening process is we screen in first grade, and then students who come in after first grade never get screened.
We're gonna be upping that first, fourth, seventh.
So in AR, this is AR, right? Can we change this language? It says screening will occur first grade. Where is that? Does say it here somewhere.
Because this was the first year, right, that was this the first year we didn't use the COGATs, or was this?
Yeah, last spring.
Yeah, this was yes, this last year was the first year we didn't use that. Okay.
And for first time ever, kids that had interviewing factors, that mask before came out.
Came up?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can't find it. I was- I have it in my notes, but I can't find it in my language here.
Students are to be screened for gifted education universally during the first grade or by referral. So how about if we say universally during the first grade and for right now until we formalize everything, at other, how do I want to say that?
Intervals.
What's that? Yeah.
Intervals when deemed appropriate.
Okay, so change in placement section. So down at the bottom, near the bottom, change in placement. This paragraph is written as though the students have the agency and authority, not parents, guardians. Like it's a different, it looks like students who wish to revoke their gift of dictation supports may do so with consent. A student who wishes to reinstate services after revocation must follow the procedures. Is there a reason why that's written that way?
It should only be that way for children who are of age, so I think we should say, parents or guardians. Parents or guardians who wish to revoke gifted education supports and services may do so. Do we want to say?
I don't even know we need that.
We need to give this, I think it's, well, since we're saying that only students with parental consent can revoke gifts as education supports, you simply, and I don't think that's the correct title, I think it would be parent revocation, I think it would be parent guardian revocation of services.
Right.
And then just simply say, forget the first sentence, then the request for revocation of gifted services should be made in writing. A parent/guardian who wishes to reinstate, parent/guardian or student over 18 years old who wishes to reinstate services must follow the procedures outlined above.
Yeah, and actually, so that last sentence I have a problem with as well. But yeah, so we'll just turn that first one around, we'll change the title of the section. We'll strike the first sentence. Actually, yeah, you can just leave the second sentence as it is, right? Just change the title, strike the first sentence. And then, it is our practice, I think, and should be our practice, that after services are revoked, which typically happens for most of our kids after 8th grade, you don't have to go through the whole GMD process again, but that's what this says. So, I mean, once you were in, you basically just have to say, no, I want to call another GIP meeting and institute.
Right, because you don't remove the label, you just remove the service.
Well, and the whole process and the
Right.
assignment
Right.
to a teacher and, you know,
Right.
all the,
No, you and I are on the same page.
yeah.
Yeah, so I think we should say that a student or parent guardian, however we want to word it, who wishes to reinstate services shall request.
I mean, I think the process would be you do it exactly the same way as requesting an otherwise unscheduled GIP meeting. So parents have the authority to do that at any time by code.
Right, because when parents reject services or say they don't want them, take the NORA, you sign the NORA.
Yeah.
And then if you want services again, you would call a meeting.
And you don't technically, because you ignore it out, you don't necessarily actually technically have the authority to call a
Well,
GIP
right.
meeting. But I think what we're
Right.
saying is we will honor that anyway,
Well,
even though you don't technically legally have the authority to do so.
Why not, or one way to do this would be simply say, parents, guardians who wish to reinstate services after revocation shall submit a written request to blank. The GIEP team shall meet and determine whether further reevaluation is necessary or whether the EIP team shall determine whether reevaluation is necessary or whether to simply proceed with the GIP.
Yeah, that's what we're trying to get at.
Yeah. But you want the team to have the ability to ask for reevaluation, because if it's 3 years go by, or 4 years, what if the kid was identified as a 4th grader, and then, 9th grade they want to reinstate, they may not be eligible.
So we said shall submit a request in writing.
Who would you like to do? Whoever you
To
like
the-
to submit it to.
To the Director of Pupil Services.
Or building principal.
Oh, yeah, a little bit as well. Good catch.
The gifted multidisciplinary gifted the GMT, well, you got it.
The GMDT.
GMDT
Yeah.
shall meet to determine if reevaluation is appropriate or whether the student.
Well, the parent can always request, so if the team said no, then they can always just request it, just.
So this should be a student, parent, or guardian, this? Or are we just saying
No, it's the
a parent?
parent or guardian wants services. If the parent or guardian just wanted to get reevaluation, they just ask for it.
Yeah.
But by asking to reinstate, by
Basically
asking,
asking to reinstate the GIP.
yeah, the school team, the
Or
GM.
well, you never reinstate GIP, you establish a new GIP every year.
Yeah. That's why I'm saying G.
Yeah.
Determine whether, or whether a new GIP should be established.
I think this makes sense because the consternation that some parents have, they go to high school, you can't have an open GIP, right? So you have to NORA kids out. And then parents are like, well, I'm afraid to NORA them out because then they have to go back to this long and
Exactly.
arduous
That's right,
process.
exactly.
So, okay, we're gonna NORA you out because you're not gonna.
So they
take
don't want
it
to do
back.
it, you're going to study this year, but
Right, but not.
sophomore year,
Right,
they want to.
right, but then in 11th grade, you might want access to that, so then, yeah.
Right. Okay.
That makes sense, all right, good.
That's all I have.
So that's for approval then. So that's an AR. We're not, we just reviewed 113. The policy and the other two ARs.
So 113.1, copy of positive behavior support.
Yeah.
I crossed out the word the two must complement each other. Behavior support is an integral part, it is educational program. It's not anything different.
Right, yeah, the two must complement each other, implies that it's something separate and apart.
So that's all I have for the policy.
Is that a
I have-
substantive change?
I have two
Okay.
things, but I don't think they're substantive.
Okay.
The word family applies in several cases, in
Mhm.
several places here, and I don't think that's what we mean. I think we mean parent guardian, parents/guardians in the plural case. And then, let me find this one. Okay, in the second sentence under authority, it says, "The effective use and appropriate strategies for developing, changing, and maintaining appropriate student behavior." The word "changing" there, developing and maintaining appropriate student behavior makes sense. Changing appropriate student behavior.
Change appropriate behavior.
Yeah.
Right, so appropriate strategies for
I think we can drop it.
developing and maintaining.
Yeah. Developing, maintaining.
That was all. I don't think either of those are substantive.
But we're still keeping the strikeout here, the two must complement.
Yep.
I'm sorry, I was
Yep.
grabbing my notes.
Yeah.
So,
While you were saying that.
so this can just be last reviewed.
This can be
Yeah.
reviewed.
And you see the word, the family?
Yes, and we're gonna,
which applies to
everything,
two
every time it
cases.
says family.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll
So
go
we
back
have
and
the
do
AR.
that.
And then that was policy then.
Right. There wasn't any changes made to the,
So the word "change," I'm sorry, so I should have made my notes clearer. The word "change" in the previous, in the policy is reflected here in behavior support under definitions. Development, change, or maintenance of selected behaviors through the systematic.
So it should just be the
maintenance,
development
development and maintenance.
and maintenance.
And then also the exact same phrase appears in the second paragraph under intervention rationale. And again, further down under restraints.
So we'll flag all of those, and then there's a couple instances where it says school district is up the red line.
Electric shock is different than corporal punishment.
So that again?
Nothing, just, I'm going through all the listed of the adverse techniques. We have electric shock in there separate from corporal punishment, so noxious substance.
I think that it comes right out of chapter 14.
Oh, I'm sure it does, I'm sure it's right in it.
Well, they're pretty much new legislation. And,
Shocking kids.
Right?
Yeah, I'm just envisioning the need for some of these, I mean, yeah, specifically,
Not our type of school.
no.
well, a lot of green sports out.
What?
A lot of green sports out not long ago.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah, that's true.
Here. Okay. Any other changes for this?
No.
Okay. So I think those are. Yeah, that's good. All right, 115.
So I added under the purpose, because we don't provide substantial vocational technical ed here, we do it primarily through Eastern. I actually added the name of the school.
Okay.
Because otherwise, it sounds like if we don't,
Yeah.
then it's on us to do that, and that's not.
Do we have to call it VOTEC versus career and technical education?
We can probably, we can change that, right?
We should change it, yeah, and it's not updated, yes, you don't need to send it for reading.
So my only question about that approach, Steve, is that, so it says, we'll provide a program of continuing technical education through Eastern. Do, in the past, have things that we have offered at the high school also fallen under this category? What's now FanCon, stuff they do in engineering. I don't know if there's any, photography.
So, through the maybe school and or Eastern, I
So before, it said we would provide
Yeah.
a session of vocational secondary education, and then later it said, we shall do it in cooperation with the Eastern Center. That didn't say that we do it sort of only.
don't know. I understand what you're saying.
And I don't know if those things qualify, like maybe the things that we offer at the high school are.
But they're part of it.
Still
Yeah,
works.
they're not a planned academic and vocational technical education courses. It's just an elective.
Right. Where like,
Okay.
Right, 'cause
yeah,
it's
at Eastern,
defining
it's all,
vocational.
it's like, it's a pathway.
You're not gonna get a
All right, I
certification
understand, yeah.
coming out of.
Yeah, you're not going to get certification.
Right, okay,
That's
so
it.
career
So
and
this
technical.
is fine. I think I have one more. Under authority, says in order to maintain, in the green language, or starting just before the green language, in order to maintain a program of vocational technical education, the board shall, in cooperation with Eastern, establish a number of credits. Does the board do that? Do we do that?
I don't know.
I mean, we establish a number of credits for graduating from high school, so maybe we do, but I wasn't sure if that was.
And we determine.
We actually do,
Okay.
because we were having this conversation as a superintendent group. We all have different numbers of credits
Oh,
of what it takes to graduate,
yeah.
and so, yeah,
We
so.
assign one class 3 credits and, okay. All
And the
right.
board does that.
Mhm.
Okay,
Yeah, through my recommendation, so like,
Right.
right,
yeah.
okay.
And this year, it may not have happened for the last, well, it didn't,
Yeah,
definitely didn't
it's
happen
not.
last year, but there's going to be a couple new programs at Eastern, and so they'll be,
We must have when they did the veterinary program, because that was added a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
So we must have done it then. I just don't remember. Or it just happened and,
Delegation of responsibility. It says student and parents are informed of the admission. And like it's a policy, I think student and parents shall be informed. Is that what we mean? Are we charging that we need to notify people? Was that what this is trying to accomplish?
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So R
it is.
will become
Shall.
shall be.
That's all I have.
All right, so that'll be first read. So 117. homebound.
117, homebound instruction. A new purpose statement there, the board directs that homebound instruction shall be provided by the district for students who meet the criteria set forth in this policy.
Right, and so my question is, I don't see criteria in this policy.
So, one of the things, so when we look at the language in the AR, we need to pull some of that language and actually put some of it
Mhm.
into the policy. So, under guidelines, where it says this, there's a small little paragraph, and then the student's medical diagnosis, that 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah.
1 and 2 definitely, I think, have to be put in the policy.
I think we just did this a couple of years ago and took, all the stuff was probably I think in policy.
Policy,
and
and
we
took it
put
out, yeah.
into the AR.
Yeah. So we'll swing the pendulum back just a little bit.
I have a bunch of, the language in AR overall, there's a bunch of sloppiness in it.
Yes, I have a whole bunch of stuff to go over in the AR.
Okay. So, but your point is that those first two bullets
I believe so.
are basically the criteria.
Right.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I'm good with that.
So then when we look at the AR, the second page. When eligibility for homebound instruction has been established, the district will commence providing it. I think we should just say the district shall provide this instruction.
Yeah. We'll commence providing, should just, yeah. Yeah, there's a bunch of awkward stuff in language. I didn't catch that one.
Shall provide the instruction. I don't like in a reasonably prompt manner in accordance with the law. I think we should just say, it's been established, the district shall provide this instruction in accordance with the law.
Right, so what you're taking out is that it will start quickly.
Right. And it may, and it may not, I mean, depending upon availability of people. Or we could say, the district shall provide this instruction as quickly as practicable in accordance with the law. Does that sound? It was good, wasn't it?
I like that, I like practical.
I know.
Anytime you get a fourth syllable word.
Yeah. Shall provide this instruction as quickly as practicable in accordance with the law. The district shall provide homebound instruction only for those confinements expected to last at least 2 weeks, but exceptions may be made. This is sloppy. Typically, under 2 weeks, we do not. I can't think of it, well, I shouldn't say that, because as soon as I say I can't think of time.
Yeah, I think the beginning of the school year.
Yeah, so, so I think we should say, the district shall provide homebound instruction only for those confinements expected to last at least 2 weeks, unless recommended by the superintendent. Mike?
Except as recommended by the
Just, yeah, I think, because then you said, and the board approves, but if we're waiting for,
No, yeah.
like, a
Right.
board
No,
meeting.
we'd be
Yeah.
ratifying the
Right.
action, yeah.
Well, why do you need board approval at all?
Yeah, I would just say,
Right.
except as
So
recommended.
the superintendent doesn't mean make direct.
Right, yes, okay.
Oh, yeah.
The district shall provide for those unless otherwise directed by the superintendent.
Yep. The period of homebound instruction for an individual shall not exceed 3 months. The superintendent or designee may request approval from the Department of Education to extend the period of homebound for an individual, which shall be reevaluated every 3 months. Like that, again, is sloppy.
Yeah,
So a period of homebound
should be.
shall not exceed 3 months unless
Determined
Why-
necessary for reevaluation.
So you have to request from PDE to do that? Is that really, is that right?
The consequence for not requesting is you won't get reimbursed.
Uh-huh.
Oh, I see. Right, okay.
So what we're saying is they must be reevaluated every.
So we
3
probably
months.
need to do whatever, use the language
Right.
that's in statute here.
But you may, even if the Department of Education doesn't extend it,
right,
your
you're still
district may still want to approve it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
How about the period of homebound instruction shall be,
We have a every 3 months.
right,
And we'll, I mean, you know, and you have to even put it in here, we'll,
How about extended
Well,
periods of homebound, right? Extended periods of homebound instruction shall be reevaluated every 3 months.
Yes.
this is AR, right? I mean, we can say, if we even need to say it, that we'll apply for reimbursement, but that's not necessarily the deciding factor on
That's
whether.
That's a separate, I think continue.
Yeah, I don't think
Anything
that,
else you.
Shall be reevaluated every 3 months. And then I think the rest of that can be taken out.
So the next line,
Next line, the rest of it.
pregnancy is not approved. Pregnancy is not an approved condition, or pregnancy, I mean, we're not.
Right.
Yeah.
Not an improved condition for hormones.
Yeah.
I don't know why you would put that in there.
Yeah, why don't, like, pregnancy shouldn't be, like,
It's not a disability.
Well, yeah, and it's also, you're not saying anything about any other condition.
Specific condition.
right, well, unless there, it talks about mental illness, but I mean, pregnancy, mental illness, like, both of those to me should be taken out, right? Because we have, because if,
I know.
because if the doctor said, if we get a letter from a doctor, right? So I'm comfortable taking pregnancy out.
The whole line.
Yes,
Yeah.
take that whole
Whole line.
sentence out.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Good, because I had that flag.
Then take out the next line too.
Like, yeah, but,
Do we require a psychiatrist, or do we sometimes allow it to be some other medical help?
Yeah, I have
Yeah.
questions.
we would allow it if it's, even
Yeah.
if it's someone's primary care.
Yeah, we would, I mean,
Did
we
you take out
might,
that
we might
sentence
want to
as
look
well?
behind it. I mean, it's no different than if somebody's
And for any other medical
foot
issue.
doctor,
Right.
you know, allows it for some.
Exactly.
Students who are receiving homebound shall be counted for attendance purposes as if in regular school attendance.
I'm not sure
Someone will pay by the word.
how.
And it's just, this looks like a TSB here.
Yes, I'm sure it is.
It is. I think we should just say attendance.
Shall be counted as if,
Or just attendance will be, records of attendance will be kept during the period of homebound instruction.
Well, as
I mean, how-
yeah. Homebound instruction counts as attendance for, yeah.
Students are receiving.
They're late.
oh,
For their
students who are
homebound
receiving homebound
instruction.
instruction shall be considered in attendance.
Shall be considered in attendance.
Yeah.
I love to see the tardies for your homebound instruction.
Please check your record.
I made my room, I'm not coming down.
You will be tardy if you don't get down to 9 or 10 work on. Students receiving homebound instruction may not participate in extracurricular or athletic activities sponsored by the district during the period of such homebound instruction unless an exception is granted by the superintendent or designate.
Okay.
I had no problem.
Yeah, I'm just saying, the reason that's in there is because you don't want to, typically, somebody I don't know wouldn't, you should, if they're not able to attend school, they shouldn't be able to attend an activity that I could see.
There could be a mental
I could
health
see
issue.
an exception.
Well, there is.
Right, I can see it.
Exceptions are allowed.
Right.
What's that?
Exceptions are allowed here. Doesn't, maybe it's not the superintendent, maybe it's, building principal or something.
Well, that's it, or designate.
Yeah. Where the condition is not inimical to the condition.
Yeah, that's a judgment call.
Amenable?
Inimical.
Or you just throwing it out because I threw it
Yes.
back there?
It's a battle.
Big weird day.
How about students receiving homebound instruction may not participate in extracurricular activity sponsored by the district during the period of such homebound instruction unless approved to do so by,
Whoever approved the homeland instruction probably is already part of the same approval process.
and then students' participation in employment, I don't know why we're getting into.
No,
Take that out.
Take that out.
But I think, yeah, well, I assume it's saying, hey, if they can go out and work, why can't
We're
they
not a
go to
doctor,
school?
we're not a doctor.
Yeah.
Right.
Let a doctor tell us that.
Right.
The board reserves the right to withhold homebound instruction when the instructor's presence in the place of the student's confinement presents a hazard to the health of the teacher, parent or other adult in authority is not at home.
Parent, guardian?
Yeah, parent guardian. And then the condition for the student is such as to preclude any benefit from such instruction. Number 3, I think, is making a big judgment call.
Yeah, I agree, it's also any benefit, I mean.
Right. I mean, I agree with number 1 and 2, but I think number 3 I'd like to get rid of.
Yeah, fine, that's fine.
I got 2 more.
I don't think you want to say, do we want to say a parent guardian is not at home or is not present with the student?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, at home is not the right.
You know, Human isn't always at home.
Right.
Yeah.
You had 2 more things?
Yep. Under guidelines, the very first sentence, I'm not clear if the sentence is really in the policy or staying here, but either way, I had to read it about 4 times in order to parse it. I'm sure there's a better way to say it, but what we're trying to say is the student's doctor
Mm-hmm.
shall complete the attached form, but it says, so doctor says, treating Pennsylvania licensed practitioner of the healing arts.
I see where you're going.
Yeah, so,
Require a doctor, or they're like a nurse practitioner?
You
Like,
want to
what's
say
the-
that the Pennsylvania licensed practitioner of the healing arts treating the student shall complete.
that works much better for me, thank you.
Like you said.
And, let's see, delegation.
I can say it.
Oh, yeah.
And by the way, broken should be Pennsylvania dash license. Just to make sure you're not talking about somebody who happens to live in Pennsylvania and is a licensed practitioner somewhere.
Yes. Under delegation, it says students who are eligible will be approved. So are students approved or is homebound instruction approved for the student?
Homebound instruction is approved.
Yeah, so that's not what it says. So homebound instruction will be approved for eligible students by the school principal. Or delegation of responsibility. New Tom.
Students who are eligible will be approved. Yeah, but homebound instruction
Homebound
will be
instruction will be
approved.
approved for eligible students by the school principal, or doesn't.
Or doesn't. School principal, building principal.
Oh, yeah, by the building.
Yeah, there's another school principal in the guidelines. And then there's the link here.
Yeah. Actually, look at it.
All right, so we have first room for AR, and then this has been reviewed. Okay. So we're gonna, as soon as we do maybe 117, we'll do the first reading for the policy 117. We'll see it back next month with the AR, with the changes that we talked about.
119.1, copy of assembly speakers, we talked about repealing that.
Yeah, so I have a question on that. And I'm confident we talked about this before. Are we just eliminating it completely, or is this covered by something else? Like, shouldn't there be something that says, or maybe there is, something that says, anyone we come to invite into the building to speak to our students shall, all these things?
I don't know that there's anything written down. I mean, I think, this policy was in place when other infractions have occurred.
Yeah, I mean, not that it was,
Yeah.
not saying it was
Right.
effective, but.
No, but I think some of our own internal processes, like, all that stuff now is what gets routed through Dave's office. So if there's gonna be, any type of, speakers, presentations or whatever, it comes to our ed leaders meetings, it comes through Dave's office.
So do we put that in there and say any speakers? I mean, what sets forth that process right now, just other than internally they know?
It's part of our expectations for administrators.
Right, so the question is, when we're talking about revoking a policy, is that good enough for the board? Does the board need to specify
Right.
something for the
Right, what's
administration to
the-
do, or we're just, letting it be, so right now we have a practice, but if
But I
if
would,
that's not followed, there's no teeth.
Right,
Right, I mean, the whole idea is that if it's not followed, then there's an ability to do
Right.
something about it because
Right.
they didn't follow policy and,
Right.
listen, you're supposed to do this.
right, but we have a whole host of things that administrators have to do that aren't in policy or in procedure.
Right.
That is almost certainly true.
If we want to just leave this alone and leave this policy about assembly speakers, I don't necessarily have a strong
I
feeling
don't
one
even,
way or
I mean, do we do, that's what I'm wondering.
Like,
do
Given,
we have right now?
here's where I come,
Right.
here's where the question comes from. Not that long ago, we had a big problem with this. And it feels like if we say we don't need this policy, we're just being blind to that.
Yeah, this is still raw enough that you might want to.
Yeah, that exactly.
We can just,
There's an open wound here.
right.
Yeah.
I think it speaks to,
We can merge it with something if you want,
Right.
yeah,
and not have it be a standalone policy, but I think.
Maybe just keep it here.
just keep it,
Come back in a year or two.
right. We'll just leave that.
Otherwise, you run into, this is what somebody will ask me. Of all the 30 things on the agenda, this is the one thing.
Right,
somebody will
because
ask you
that's,
about.
yeah.
And then-
That's
then
where
what
the
to do
real
next.
is coming from. Yeah.
You lived it for the first time, but well,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, and just so everyone knows, the reason that I have this whole host of things that I want administrators to do is because these policies has been in since 2002,
Right.
and obviously,
Hasn't, yeah.
Well, that,
Do we need to?
I think there's
So
something
no, so
about,
that's just.
Just review.
I think the part about expecting to exercise judgment, investigate fully, I think that might be, I would have thought that was new language, but it doesn't show that it was amended, so maybe it is, maybe it was always there.
Yeah, I don't know.
But we had a whole
Yeah.
new protocol established for people we could have met a speaker.
Yeah.
so 127, copy of assessment of educational program. This is one of the policies where it says like the board develops and implements, but the board doesn't really develop
Yeah.
or implement. Nor would the board prepare an assessment plan.
Yeah.
So the changes that I've made in here basically delegate it.
To the district.
Right.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think, like at least last year, I have to believe it happened also before, a list of assessments comes forward to the board, like the systemic assessments
Yeah.
for approval, so that,
Yeah.
the board.
Yeah, so under authority, one of my questions is the second paragraph, which you didn't change this one. The board reserves the right to review district assessment measures. Is that even a right we need to reserve? We also used to reserve the right to approve those that serve a legitimate purpose.
I would say reserve the right to review it, because let's say we get an administrator and they want to go rogue and they want to bring in some sort of assessment, and there's, an outcry over it.
Okay. So we wouldn't already have the right to do something about that?
Oh, well, yeah, I guess, yeah.
But it just leaves it in there, so
Well,
people know.
Yeah, you have some good points here.
Yeah,
Okay.
all right, I'm good with these.
So one more, under delegation of responsibility, third paragraph. It says, the district will provide information and programs about the assessment so that parents can make informed decisions. What decisions? I think we can drop the, so that parents can make
Yeah.
Informed decisions, yeah, for that, what does that mean?
So take this off.
Oh.
And after assessments.
Yeah, I think that's,
Yep.
okay.
In theory, there's no decision to make here, people make them, claiming religious exception or whatever, but.
Okay.
Next one, 142, migrant education.
So that's
It's just, we replace No Child Left Behind with
Yep.
ESSA.
makes sense.
Yeah.
And school choice,
And school choice, same thing, just with.
So school choice, I am confident that we reviewed this in our time here, Sarah, and it's been since 2005.
I agree.
Very good.
I remember specifically saying on this first line of purpose, unless it was in something else, the same line as somewhere else, that, that's
Right.
really defensive.
Yes, we
Wording.
talked, I know we had this conversation, I know, I don't know where it is.
Maybe it was the AR. Is there an AR for it?
There isn't any, oh my love. But we did have that conversation about it, I remember that.
Now, Steve's fundamental question, do we need this at all, I think is still a valid question, but,
Probably for auditing.
but I think when we discussed this last time, we asked Ken that very question, he said, yeah, it's a good
It's the
idea.
AR.
Well, yeah, this is,
No,
yeah,
well,
because
143.
it's about persistently dangerous.
We looked
Yeah.
at AR,
Well,
AR 140.
143 was listed as first reading repeal, but we have that AR out there.
It was approved in 2017.
So I'm wondering if we created that in 2017 and failed to update the policy at the same time.
Probably.
I think that,
Well, you may not have needed to update.
I don't think they wanted to. I don't think it on.
But then we would have reviewed it.
Or we just missed it.
There should have been reviewed it, but we only updated the AR, we did not update the policy.
Okay.
We haven't updated, well, we did in 2005.
Yeah, that was not.
Yeah, right, yeah, we just
Yeah,
missed
It
it.
was just, you should put a review date, oh, we put on a review date now.
Well, we're changing the wording of,
Yeah, I would just, if we can just strike the
That's
district operates schools in a safe manner, however,
oh, we had that conversation.
right.
I would feel, I would,
What? When we're taking out this?
yeah.
The district
Yeah.
operates.
It's just, it's
Start with
being
the
defensive, it's saying, listen,
Right.
we don't have a bad school, we had that whole conversation, I do
Yeah.
recall it, yeah, okay. All right, so that's for first reading. All right, that was pretty incredible.
And by the way, we were 1 minute. We saw 1 minute.
Excellent job.
We did.
And we started a couple minutes late, so, all right, nice work. We don't have any community members for community input, so there's that. We have a next policy committee meeting in October. October 14th is when our next meeting is, so, all right, unless there's anything else, we're adjourned. Great, thank you.
All of that and the word